our agenda. I won't read this to you, I'm just going to throw it up there. You'll see you have the PowerPoint in front of you. If you want to take notes or anything like that, you're welcome to. To get through sessions, I just love to have some norms. The one I just want to stop on that I think is most important is, first of all, I do promise to get you out of here on time. We will be done at 11. I know everybody's super busy and we are really appreciative of you taking the time to be with us today. I'll stop here just at assuming best intentions. This is a safe place. If you have questions or worries or any of those things, go ahead and ask them. We want to hear from you. We want to make sure you're comfortable. And also, let's assume the very best of all of our teachers and families, kids, everyone we work with. Does anybody have another norm they like in sessions to have in meetings? All right, great. So why is this so important to us? I have the feeling that everyone in this room is here because you value the importance of family engagement. But just to let you know some of the things research is showing family engagement is associated with. We are seeing reduced dropout rates where families are engaged, higher graduation rates, increased student achievement, some other pieces that are a little bit more qualitative, like kids just being happier in school, which I think is huge to all of us, better social skills and fewer behavior problems for teachers to report. These are important things to the day-to-day life of a teacher, as I'm sure you can imagine. Before we go much further into the session, I want to make sure we sort of have a normed idea of what great family engagement looks like and what we mean when we talk about family engagement, because there are a lot of different definitions out there for what this could mean. So just for a second, everybody in this room has had some educational success. Okay? So I'd like us to think for a minute about our own families and the role that your family played in getting you to the point you are today. So how did they affect your academic success? What role did they play? If you guys could just talk to someone near you, well, what was it that your family did for you along the road? Things I've heard from you all did not surprise me because it is what research really bears out families can do to accelerate student learning. So I heard a lot of people, a theme in this room was, it was always the expectation that I was going to go to college. How many people feel that that resonates? Mm-hmm. That is the high expectations that families can hold when they really know what the bar is for their child. And that is of such huge importance. So these 5 roles are what we have found families can do to accelerate student learning. Because there isn't a ton of research on like, what exactly can a teacher do that will then make it so that all the families are engaged? It's rather what the families do to support their children. So when we talk about family engagement, what we really mean is figuring out how to help families play these 5 roles. That's sort of the norm we want to have across the city. We want to do this. So if a family is going to monitor their child's performance, they really need to know when quizzes are coming up and tests. And they need to know how their child did on those tests in order to be able to monitor that performance, and which will in turn help them to guide their child's education, right? There's a lot of information that our families need to know in order to support learning at home. What exactly does that look like? What is developmentally appropriate? Especially once we get into the secondary space, it gets much trickier, right? So we need to really provide some of these tools for our families. And finally, making sure that our families know how and where to advocate for their children. So this is a lot of information we want to share with families. When we think about how we as educators and as the DCPS community can really help families build that academic partnership and play these 5 roles, I sort of think of the 5 roles living here in academic partnerships. That's what teachers in the city are driving towards, so many of them right now. But you can't just have an academic partnership with a family. You don't just say, you're going to support your child at home, here's how you're going to do it. Because if your families don't trust you first, they're not going to care what you have to say. Or they're at least not going to be as positive that what you're telling them is really in the best interest of their child, right? So when our teachers head out to do home visits, this is just one strategy of the many strategies, so it's a very effective strategy of building a trusting relationship with families. And that is the basis of all the rest, right? And then obviously, if we want to provide all this great information with families, there's going to have to be consistent ongoing communication. So So this is really our three-pronged approach to family engagement that we are sharing with teachers across the city. Any questions about this? Is it resonating? Everyone? Okay, great. So take a look at this slide. I won't read it to you, but I'd like everybody to read it to themselves. These are our core beliefs of relationship building. Could somebody just share out if one of these is particularly speaking to you, seems particularly important to the work we're setting out to do? Yeah.
I'm struck by the role of cultural competency and interested in learning more about how the foundation builds that relationship between the school and the home.
Yeah. Any guesses as to what you think it's doing? What the role of that relationship is to building our cultural competency?
Well, I would be interested in how we prepare for the home visits and how we help teachers and schools understand one another and approach the relationship from a positive paradigm.
Great.
And perhaps honestly break down some of the misperceptions we might hold about one another.
Okay. Super. We'll set out to answer that. Anybody else something? Yeah.
Mine is this, it's the same, that last bullet point. I just think that when teachers are able to see where their children are living and how they're living, they're able to better engage them. Because sometimes I've heard from other parents that, you know, they don't know where my child comes from. So I think being able to actually go in home and engage the family in their own environment to try to break down the barriers there. I think that's important.
Absolutely. And often it's about making sure that teachers see all the assets families bring from their community to their child's education. Absolutely. Anything else you want to draw out here?
I was struck by the third, and as my work is all with the secondary linguistically and culturally diverse communities, immediately I was thinking about families that have been reunited with children they hadn't seen for many years, sometimes a decade, and now the children are living in the homes but essentially independent, so what might that look like? Or how might we help foster some greater
Understanding.
communication, understanding?
Absolutely.
I'm gonna take the point of privilege to say the thing that is most important to me is that everybody understands that, the third one, all families care about their children. And that's up there because you wouldn't believe how many people don't get that. That all families love their children, want them to succeed, and they are capable of giving them, providing for them, giving them the support that they need to grow. We have to recognize that and overcome whatever biases we have about that, where we don't see parents on the same playing field, or because they're in a different environment from us, they don't necessarily, we might believe that they are somehow not giving all that they have to give. And so that's hugely important and foundational to the work that we do in family and public engagement.
Thank you, Justine. That's right. So now that we sort of have built our norms, we know what we are looking to build. We know what these academic partnerships should look like. Well, of course, there's lots more to know. It's not finished. And we know at least the core beliefs that we are starting from. I'd really like for you all now to not just hear from me, but to hear from the community we all serve. So we're going to start by hearing from Jason. Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you. Like I said before, my name is Jason Livernois, and I just finished my 4th year teaching kindergarten. This was my first year in DCPS. And going into this past school year, I was told that I was going to be doing work with family engagement, and part of that was going on home visits to meet all of my families. So I was really excited. Before the school year even began, I was able to go on 12 home visits. That was half of my class. And I really started to feel those strong relationships that I was actually building with all of those families. And so going into the school year, the kids came in the first day of school. I knew them all. I knew some of them already. I knew some of the parents. And the first week was going great until I was actually called down to the office because one of my mothers had gone to my principal and said that I had mistreated her son. And of course, this was one family that I had not done a home visit with yet. And so immediately I'm feeling defeated and just really frustrated because this parent didn't come to me to talk about a certain situation that she had, but just went to my principal instead. And so going back into the classroom, I could immediately feel myself distancing myself from the child, and really just trying to avoid anything that might be perceived from this mother. Of course, I teach kindergarten, so you want to be loving and caring and really interactive with all of the children, and I didn't feel myself being that way with this child. And after a few weeks went on, the child continued to have really negative behaviors in the classroom. He wasn't following the classroom rules, and I could just see our school year just going downhill if I didn't do something about it. And I knew that I was going to have to reach out to this mother, even though at that present moment I didn't really want to, because I had a certain feeling towards her. But I needed to put my ego aside, I needed to put everything aside and really understand that I was there for the child and really wanted to work with this family and see what we could do to support the child in the classroom. And so I reached out to the mother, and we decided that it was best that we met at a public place. Obviously, we want to have as many home visits in the home so we can actually see where the child is living in their home environment, but because of the situation, it was just more comfortable for all of us to meet at a public place. So we met at the library. And going into the home visit with the mom and the child, we were really able to just have a normal conversation with each other. We were able to understand each other. She was able to tell me that she just felt like she couldn't trust me. She didn't know me. This is my first year at the school. She hadn't seen me before. And so she didn't feel like she could come and actually talk to me about what had happened. And so she just went to the principal about it. And I explained to her that obviously I would never mistreat any of my children, but that obviously there was miscommunication from a child to home, and but then we were able to get to know each other. I was able to understand the child's strengths. She was able to share some of his weaknesses and some of his growth areas that she really felt that he needed to work on this year. But we were able to talk about how we could better support him in the classroom so that we didn't have some of those negative behaviors continuing. And after having that home visit with the mother, it was definitely a slow turnaround, but the child really started to have more positive behaviors in the classroom. And I knew that because I had started to build a strong relationship with the mother, with the family, that she was talking to him at home as well. We were able to talk back and forth. I would send her a text message, or I'd call her and say, things are going great, he's doing this now, and he wasn't doing that at the beginning of the year. So I was really able to send more positive notes home, and whenever there was a time where he might go back to some of his behaviors that he had at the beginning of the year, she wasn't defensive when I would just say, hey, we didn't have as great of a day today, could you just talk to him about what happened? And she was like, thank you so much, I'll talk to him, and we moved on. And it was really fun because at the end of the year, which was just a few weeks ago, I was able to just pull her aside and I said, I know we had an issue at the beginning of the year, but I said, we worked through it, and that was the most important thing because we were able to help support your child in the classroom so that he could be successful academically. And I said, I just hope that you can continue building those strong relationships with your other teachers as he goes on throughout the years. So if I can share anything with you, the importance of home visits and really just getting to know the families really early on, it just helps us in the classroom, it helps the children, and it's just really important work that we're doing to build these strong relationships with our families. Thank you.
Hello again. My name is Keisha. I have 2 DCPS students, one at Dunbar High School and one at Wheatley. I'm going to talk to you about my son. He's at Wheatley. Going to the 8th grade this year. I started out, so I thought the parent that every teacher wanted to work for. I was the gung-ho parent. I was the, chaperone. I'm there. You need snacks. I got it. Whatever it is you needed, I got it. But I still was not getting the outcome that I thought I should be getting. My son was not being seen as I saw him at home. So I'm like, what's going on? He's being seen a whole other way. I can never get through this without tearing up or crying or whatever, so just, I'll be fine. So, while, I'm at home trying to find out why he's not, what's going on? You're having behavior issues. Why? You know, how come no one at school is seeing what I see in my son? I see that my son is very intelligent. He has the potential to be an honor roll student, and it's just not happening. I'm like, what's going on? So anyway, he stayed back one year. That year he stayed back, he had an altercation with a teacher that was not his teacher. And he was very rude to the teacher, and so was I. And so was my son's father. We were very protective. We are very protective of our kids. So, you know, we weren't very nice to the teacher. Then the next year comes, and guess whose class my son is in? This teacher that we weren't so nice to. His name was Mr. Davis. And so you can imagine, I'm like, oh my God. My son was like, oh my God. We're all like, oh God, what's gonna go down in this class? So when he first called for the home visit, I was like, no, I did this last year. This would have been my second home visit. I was like, no, I did this last year. Oh, and I do want to put a little disclaimer in there about the previous home visit. He stayed back that year, but the previous home visit didn't happen until much later on in the year, and I believe that if it would have happened sooner, he would not have stayed back that year, because there were improvements. He did improve in his reading. He went up 2 reading levels that year, but it still just was not enough, you know. So he did end up staying back. So back to Mr. Davis. I'm like, you know, well, I did this last year, you know, no, I'm good, we don't need it, you know. But then I got to thinking, he kept calling, you know. And so I got to thinking, I'm like, well, this is a good opportunity for me to find out where Mr. Davis's head is. You know, I wasn't nice to him, and I don't know what to say to him to make him be nice to my son, you know what I mean? Like, to get the outcome that I need, you know, for everything to be, you know, to run smoothly. So I was like, I don't know what to say. If I start off the conversation, I don't want to be like, I'm sucking up, and, you know, he's going to be like, oh, she's just sucking up, you know. So anyway, I said, okay, to the home visit. They came, and we stayed outside. I did not invite them in. I was not ready for that yet. But we talked outside. And the first thing that he was concerned with was, how did I feel about him teaching my kid? And that was, you know, it was so important to me because, you know, like I said, I didn't know how to even start the conversation. I didn't know what to say to him. And I was like, oh my God, so worried, you know. So anyway, he started the conversation, and he just let me know that his only concern was my son's success and his well-being. So I was like, great, we're on the same team. We can do this, you know. So things got better. They got much better. My son got honor roll that year. I was more active again because I had given up. I was tired at this point. I had stopped being the gung-ho parent that I started out being. I used to talk to my son, all my kids, every day. You know, they come home from school, how's your day, what'd you do, what'd you learn? And my son kept saying, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I'm tired of asking, I'm tired of hearing, I don't know. So I had stopped asking. And after this home visit, I didn't have to ask anymore. My son was coming home telling me. We were having conversations. He was telling me what he learned that day. And that was amazing to me. I was like, well, wait a minute, you know, I used to have to pull teeth to ask you, and I stopped asking. But now he was so excited. I'm telling you how excited he was. He told me himself. He didn't know what happened. He said, oh, I don't know what happened, but I'm so inspired. I don't know how they did it, you know, but I'm so inspired. I was like, wow, okay, you know, and I had seen the changes in him. I didn't want to say anything just yet, because, you know, for some of you that might have children, you might know that sometimes when you do give them that little pat on the back, they start, you know, okay, well, I'm good, and, you know. So I hadn't said anything just yet, but he patted himself on the back. So I had to, you know, let him know that, yes, son, I'm proud of you. You're doing very good, you know, keep up the good work. And once he got the honor roll, I was like, oh, well, you know what? You can't get anything less than honor roll now, right? You know that, right? So, but I'm saying all this to say that home visits was just like, it was a magic pill for my family. Not just my son, but you know, like I said, I have another kid who's in Dunbar, and I had given up on both my kids. I was just tired. I was the parent that, I was just tired. I was probably the parent that some of the teachers look at and is like, oh, she doesn't care, you know, or, you know, she just sent her kids off to school. They are clean and everything, but, you know, better because myself as a parent, and for my other child. So it made a big difference in my family, not just for my son. And so that's my story, that's my spiel. Thank you for listening.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. Clearly, you know, is every home visit that happens across the city going to be as transformative as those you've heard about today? Maybe not right away. It is also part of the work that happens at the beginning, right? And then this is a process. And I think you heard, as Jason said, you know, this was the beginning of a relationship that he was able to build over time. Was the work of Mr. Davis done with Javon right after he visited Keisha? Absolutely not. There was further communication that led to her feeling the way she does today. But this is just a very powerful beginning to that process. So now I kind of want to get into some nuts and bolts and make sure that you all feel comfortable with what the home visit is going to look like. So I'd like to first begin by sharing just the core practices of a home visit. And to your question a little bit earlier about how do we really prepare teachers to go out there to be making sure they check their assumptions about families, that they are as culturally competent as possible. The training that teachers across the district receive is actually a 3-hour training. You all are going to see a few slides that are very specific to teachers that may not mean as much for your home visit, but I'd like you just to get a sense of what they hear from us. So the very first tenet, it's most important, and everything else follows from here, is that home visits are for relationship building only. This isn't a time for teachers to get in there and tell families the rules or to set a ton of expectations. This is just a chance for everyone to meet on an equal playing field outside of the school, which is really the teacher's domain. You know, I was a teacher at Powell Elementary, and that was my home. You know, that was my space when we were in the classroom. Outside of the building, that's somewhere that everybody can be equal. Visits are for everybody. Why do you guys think this is so important when we say visits are for all the kids?
Because we used to just do home visits to kids who weren't attending school or were giving us problems.
Exactly. We used to do visits strictly for kind of negative reasons, and then we'd be like, why don't these families like us very much? I don't understand. Yeah, they're for everybody. They're for kids who are doing great, kids who could be doing better, those who are struggling. This is equal opportunity, absolutely. And we don't ever want families to feel like that only certain kids get to visit. That's not the point. They're scheduled in advance, so you will never just be sneaking up on a parent for so many obvious reasons. We respect our families in DC, and we don't want to be knocking. I wouldn't want someone just knocking on my door and surprising me. Absolutely. So this next piece is something that we really hope you can help with. Teachers, it's very important that they take some time before a visit and just to reflect on any assumptions they might have about the family that they're going to make sure they check. So they walk in saying, I'm just going to hear what I hear. I'm going to learn what I learned from this family. And then also, after the visit, they need to take some time to think about what they learned and how they're going to use it. That reflection piece is so important to actually making this into the powerful tool that it can for teachers. And then finally, teachers go in pairs and they're compensated for their time. They are professionals. This is time consuming. And obviously we go in pairs, yes, for safety, but maybe even more importantly, to me anyway, and I think to what most teachers would tell you, is that second pair of ears and eyes. Just because when you're in the middle of a conversation, to have somebody say, oh, you know, I heard that a little bit differently during the reflection, or did you hear when the mom or dad said this about their child? Maybe you missed that in the moment, and so you all will be playing a really important role in terms of that quick follow-up after the visit. Just, hey, what did we hear? What did we learn? What can you do about that following the visit? So that's the importance of pairs. Just to give you guys a quick idea of what the home visit looks like. So teachers, and this will not be a role so much that you all play, but just so you know that it is happening, teachers are going to make sure that they explain the purpose of the visit. They will introduce the fact that you are joining them on the home visit. They will schedule the visit in advance, and they will most visits are gonna be about 20, 30 minutes long. Sometimes they're longer. I'm not gonna fit, sometimes you get there and there's like dinner, dinner, yeah. So it can happen, if that's an issue for you, there are lots of ways to just say to the teacher, like, I'm gonna have a hard stop, and teachers can message that to families, if that's something you're worried about. Go with partners, schedule in advance, we like to say it again and again. And then they should happen as early as possible in the school year or the summer. The visits you all will be attending should happen before September 3rd. That's the goal. And then finally, teachers are not done with the home visit, and you may also want to just shoot a postcard over to the family and say thank you. Follow-up is so important, just as another touch point. Any questions about that quick at a glance, what it looks like? Alright, so what do you guys do? First of all, what are you gonna get from this experience? I think most of you probably know this, but the first thing we're gonna do is just learn more about what our teachers are doing to build relationships in the city. So I know you all work hard to make sure that things run smoothly for teachers, but obviously at the end of the day, you're working towards parents and kids being successful. So you'll learn more about what teachers are doing. You're gonna get to know another DCPS family. How many people already, you are a DCPS parent right now? Anybody else a DCPS parent? Great. And so you know a lot of families. You're gonna get a chance to meet another family in our community. And then what's most important about getting to know someone is knowing what they value and their hopes and dreams for their child. We get other perspectives, right? We widen our own perspective on the families we serve and the district. And then finally, you'll have a chance to kind of check in with what you can do in your day-to-day work for families and kids. What's this gonna look like? Very quickly, I'll show you what the agenda looks like of the visit. We always check our assumptions at the door. Jason's just passing out an even deeper agenda for you so that we can see what exactly each role looks like. You'll see we kind of break this up into 3 parts. We frame, we listen, that's the most important thing, and then finally we share, we ask for an expectation from families. To me, the most important piece of a home visit is that listen, right? We're gonna learn so much about our families during this time. So most specifically, we'll get to know about them and we'll learn more about their hopes and dreams. So what you're looking at in front of you is sort of a rundown of who's doing what. You'll see a lot of your role is listening actively, asking questions that will help to follow up or to make something clearer to you and the teacher where needed. But for the most part, the teacher will sort of own pushing the agenda forward and making sure that they get to all the parts. I think that makes the most sense for our context. So any questions about your particular role in these parts of the home visit?
I was just wondering if we could talk about the voluntary nature and the paper.
Sure. So during a home visits are voluntary. Any family that has opened their door to you is voluntary to teachers and it's voluntary to families. So teachers that are going to be taking you out on the home visit have volunteered for that position. Jason's one of them. Thank you, Jason. And the families will also be volunteering. We don't force anybody to let us come over. Fine. And the other thing that Susan pointed out is we don't bring a bunch of paper, as I mentioned earlier. This is not a chance for us to come in and set down the rules to our families. It's a chance for us to listen. So we don't come in with a notepad or anything along those lines. That would be inappropriate when you go out with your friends. You don't take notes on what they did last weekend. Or like when you're trying to find out more about a new friend, you don't write it all down. So we don't do that to our families. And as you can see, this is sort of the flow of the home visit. Hopes and dreams is a huge moment. So many of our families, I can't tell you how many parents I have talked to who say, nobody ever asked me about my hopes and dreams for my child before. And just think of that for a minute. I mean, that's really transformative. To have a moment to think, not just what are my hopes and dreams for this year, which could be first grade, second grade, pre-K, maybe middle school, high school, but also who is the adult that I want to see when my child completes this education process. So it helps us to kind of hear that. It helps the child to hear their family say what they want for their education. So it's a big moment, and hopefully you all will find it as exciting as I do. Right now, just to make sure you guys are really comfortable in the actual home visit, what I'd like to do is think about this first part where we're gonna introduce ourselves. So the teacher introduces themselves. This shouldn't take very long, because again, the star of the show is the family, right? But I wanna make sure you all are very comfortable thinking about how you would like to share about yourself, what you wanna say. So, sort of a rundown, what we're imagining is you would share your title or something about your role, and just something about yourself, so that the family knows you are another human being, warm and interested person, and that you are there primarily to just find out how you can better serve families in the district. Alright? So I'd like you to think about that for a moment, how you'd like to introduce yourself, what you'd like to share with families in your short intro, and then we're gonna go ahead and turn and role play that with someone next to you, so make sure each of you gets a chance to just share who you are and how you would say that. So, while this exercise may seem like, I know how to introduce myself, Diane, I'm really good at it, I do it all the time. The reason we ask you to do this is because it really is a chance for our families to just to make sure they're super comfortable with the fact that you are there. Make yourself human, share a little bit about not just your job, but something personal about yourself. What do you like? What do you love about DC? Whatever it is for you that will put families at ease. So I want to make sure that you all just have a chance to ask me any questions you might have about your role right now in the home visit. As you think about that, Vincent?
What's the very next step for the people in the room?
After the home visit.
Not after today.
After, we'll get to that.
Okay,
No
great.
worries. Right now, just thinking about the home visit. Any questions about that stage?
Do you have any tips about how to be in somebody's home? I.e., you walk in, you're talking to families, and for full disclaimer, I have not personally done a home visit. So while I oversee the work, I haven't gone in and done this myself, but my sense is I'm gonna go in there, I'm not gonna go looking around at everything in the person's house, what have you, and take mental notes of everything of what I see. And so, how do you be in the space?
I think that's a great question. Obviously, the first spot that you started from, which is your common sense about making other people comfortable, is the first place. But I'm actually going to throw this to these guys because Keisha has hosted and Jason's been out there on the visit. So
Yeah, I'll definitely share. One home visit that I went on this past summer, walking up to the home, I had 5 men who immediately greeted me and were like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "Whoa." And immediately I just said, "Oh, I'm Zoe's teacher." And they're like, "Oh, okay, great, come on in." I met with the mother, and I'm sitting there with my TA, and my TA at the moment was talking, and I just looked, and there was a cockroach that was going up the wall, and I just was, and I just didn't react to it, and it was just that it really kind of brought home to me, like, this is the environment that my student is living in. And so I didn't react to it. It was something I had never experienced before, but we don't want to react negatively to those things because our families are sensitive to those things. So that was one. Another one I had walked into, I have a hard time breathing around smoke, and I had walked into an apartment that was full of smoke. And even though I could have reacted negatively towards it, and with my expressions on my face that I use often, I didn't, and I just made sure our home visit was more towards a 20-minute time length, but I was still able to get all the information that I needed, and we still were able to really build a strong relationship. So just kind of putting my own worries aside and knowing that I was there for the child to understand more about them and their family.
Adding to that, like the smoke thing, you wanna take care of yourself. You wanna, I guess, let the teacher know, that you're, maybe you're allergic to smoke, or you're allergic to dogs, or afraid of dogs, and find out if the family has a dog and things like. Usually the teachers will find out those types of things, especially if they, have an issue with it themselves too. But yeah, just be genuine, be yourselves, and you'll be fine.
I really think that's the number one thing. Walk in,
we encourage the parents to have the child in another room while we do the visits, or to have the child kind of there to interact and see what's going on?
Wonderful question. So I really think I always left that up to my families, how they wanted that to work. Sometimes with the very, very little ones, it makes sense to have someone kind of playing with the child a little bit while maybe the teacher, maybe you're taking some turns meeting one another. But I think that's really, it does come down to being up to the family. I don't know if you'd be on a visit like this, but sometimes the family has something to share they don't want their child to hear. And so maybe they would try to have their child be in a separate room, but we leave that up to family choice. Yep.
So building off of the earlier piece about this, the visits being for all of the students, what are the, I guess the supports in place or the measures taken to ensure communication with the families who speak other languages?
Great question. So in our 3-hour training of teachers, we go through a series of resources that are available to teachers. We also strongly encourage teachers to find out who is most comfortable for the family in terms of a translator. I taught at Powell. I don't speak Spanish. So all of my home visits were conducted, or the majority were conducted in Spanish. If I wasn't able to go with a co-teacher or another teacher who did speak Spanish, we always ask the family, is there someone there in your home that does speak English that you're comfortable with as a translator? And a lot of times that is the most useful thing. But we also provide them with, all the other resources that DCPS has to offer. And we talk to them quite a bit about best practices when speaking through a translator, such as making sure your true intention is very, very clear that this is for relationship building. Because as you mentioned, home visits weren't always just for relationship building. So we don't want if we were to bring an outside source in as a translator, we would not want the purpose to be misconstrued.
I have, well, like I said, it was my first experience with a home visit, and I really enjoyed it very, very much. My last family I went to go visit, I'm a community liaison through America Vista, and the family didn't have any furniture, so we had to sit on the floor, which wasn't a problem for me, because it felt like at home, and we all got to pass the baby around, trained the baby, did the paperwork, and I was offering her the things that I can do with this, for her as a parent, as a America Vista. And then she was like, you can get me furniture? And I was like, yes, we can get you furniture, get you beds, get you food, get you clothes, and stuff like that. And then I guess she got on the phone and she made a phone call, and then it was more people coming in. They wanted to hear what I can offer them. And then next thing you know, we just got in the car and we went to go get the food and clothes and stuff. Well, I got in the car with the person I went with was for wraparound care, but everybody else followed us to go get the furniture. So I really enjoyed myself yesterday. And I was supposed to went on this morning, but I forgot I had to be here too as well, so I had to pass it out. But I really enjoyed myself yesterday.
That's great to hear. Great to hear. And sometimes families might share their bigger needs. I actually wouldn't always anticipate that. I think that this is the very beginning of a relationship, so we have to see what families are willing to share, and a lot of the true relationship is built following this first experience, right? We don't meet one another and suddenly have a perfect relationship. Just in the interest of time, I want to make sure that we get to the next few pieces. One is, we will ask you, and I think this is the most important part of your role here, is that you're going to help debrief the visit with the teacher. So you'll take time to talk about what you learned, find out how this teacher intends to use the information that they learned about the family in the classroom to help support the child. Because again, we want to build strong relationships. We build strong relationships in service of academic success for children. So that's kind of the end, and I'd love for you all to find out how they are intending to build those academic partnerships based on what they learned today. Be sure that you kind of share that perspective on the background, hopes and dreams, and expectations for the teacher. And when we come back, since you've asked about how you will leverage that, how the teacher will leverage that learning in the classroom, when we come back on September 3rd, I'd love you to come back with that information so that we can kind of share all together what's happening as a result of all this relationship building. So this is a chance for you all to ask any questions you have of me. We'll get to next steps in just a moment, which will be more about logistics of what this will look like. Alicia, I really encourage you to ask them. Or if you wonder anything about their home visit experience,